the current list, and we're also going to do some practice squad. And JT, you have a list as well that we're not going to show it because it'd be too many lists at once, but we will cross-reference it. Let's see if I can zoom in here a little bit. Oh yeah, look at how that's much better. Let's just do that over here so the folks can see at home. I don't have the Titans keeping Malik Willis on the roster, and we've talked about this. Would it shock me? No, if Malik Willis ended up making the final 53, but we know Levis and Rudolph are locks at this point. We talked about it at length on the last show. Rudolph is your quarterback too, always was. With Willis, he falls into that. This is going to be a recurring theme all show. All the guys that I have on the practice squad, which is in yellow, fall into that charity guy category where I would not be shocked to see them make the team because, again, when you get to roster spot 44, 45, 46, it becomes a who wants to join this team situation. You're just kind of handing out golden tickets. It has less to do with guys like, we've got to have him on the team. He's really going to turn into something. It's a lot of flyers and security guys and just who you're a fan of currently. So is this what you had, JT? Do you have the Titans keeping 2 or 3 quarterbacks?
So I agree with you. I think coming off of the conversation that we had last week or post the second preseason game, talked a lot about how it really just feels like Will Levis and Mason Rudolph are the 2 guys that they would keep. Obviously, it's a discussion of risk versus reward, keeping Malik Willis on the practice squad. However, from what we've seen,
what's
from
the
him,
real risk? Can we talk about what's the real risk?
That's the question I was going to pose there. Besides, and this is an interesting discussion, I think that's been brought up early this week, besides the maybe a little bit of a fan attachment to a guy like Malik Willis, who, was talked up so highly before being drafted in the 3rd round, kind of in that in-between space for the Titans the past couple of seasons. A lot of fans kind of have this connection to him because he's also a really stand-up guy. Is a solid guy off the field as well as on the field. But, I don't really see a downside of keeping him on the practice squad because, like you said, that 3rd emergency backup quarterback rule is something that really, isn't that big of a deal. Like, once again, you do not have to have the quarterback on the active roster before game day. He can be on the practice squad and can be a game day elevation at no other cost, but he has to be on the game day roster, right? So,
correct.
So that's not something that, is incentivizing them keeping him on the active roster, the 53-man. But like we said, just the performance from Malik Willis the past couple of weeks, although improved, doesn't show much in the confidence category, in my opinion, to say that this guy is deserving of this spot when you have so many other depth positions that you might as well keep a couple other guys.
Yep, we're on the same page. So I think we can move on from what is ultimately the least. I don't think anybody's really questioning this at this point. Again, will it be shocking if Willis gets in? No, but I'll be surprised as to who gets left out instead of him. On to running back here. We talked about this at length on Tuesday's show. Spears and Pollard, obvious locks. I might be kicking myself a week from now for not just going ahead and locking this in with Julius Chestnut. And I said on Tuesday that it's a lock. I feel that it is. You know what? It's time for me to put my money where my mouth is. I'm changing it to blue. For the record, let the record show. Julius Chestnut, a lock to make this team. I said it on Tuesday. I need to reflect it with my sheet here. I think Chestnut is your running back 3. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be. Of the 3 guys vying for that last spot, I don't know how you can argue any of the other 2 guys. That was a terrible sentence. Let's start that over. I don't know how you can argue that the other 2 guys offer you more than Chestnut in the actual running game. In fact, I would argue Chestnut is the only one of the 3 of them that does offer anything in the running game. With Haskins, all of the upside of special teams. If special teams, if they change the kickoff rule to just no more kickoffs, we're just going to give teams the ball. Hassan Haskins would probably be out of the NFL. Like I don't see it. And then Jabari Small, again, a young player, did not impress at all in the preseason. Very much a practice squad body. I've been calling him the quintessential practice squatter, and yet I don't have him on the practice squad here. I have Haskins making the practice squad. Do you have any issue with this? Is this reflective of your sheet as well?
Yeah, so we're 2 for 2 here on our positions. I have Julius Chestnut as the 3rd running back. I have the Titans only keeping 3 running backs, and that comes down to, I believe that there are other positions on this team where they will keep guys who can serve as that special teamer role maybe not as good as Hassan Haskins, because Hassan Haskins might be the best special team guy that they may end up having. But because of the kind of inefficiencies of the rest of the roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball, I think you have guys who bring that special teams upside and can also play on a side of the ball where you don't have like a Tyjae Spears and a Tony Pollard already like ready to go.
Yeah, I agree. I really have no more to say on this either. So you want to just move on? Let's just keep going, trucking along here.
Sure, let's keep
the receiver
along.
position. Said it a week ago. I'm going to continue to say it. The Titans are keeping 6 receivers, and their names are DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, Traylon Burks, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, and Jaquan Jackson. And Colton Dowell, technically, because he's on PUP. So shout out Colton Dowell. Yeah, the only purple guy on here. We've beaten this one to death too. So I don't have much to say beyond the fact that, like I said on Tuesday, I'm still going to give it a 7.5% chance. I've neither increased nor decreased that percentage. A 7.5% chance they keep 7 receivers because they get to the bottom and just decide, Mason Kinsey, you're one of the more talented guys. We're going to keep you, especially in the wake of DeAndre Hopkins, maybe missing a game or two. Will he be on the roster all year long when Hopkins is back and everybody's healthy? Maybe not. Probably not. But for now, week 1, week 2, let's get you in here. You'll start the year on the 53. I think it will be Mason Kinsey. I don't see any world in which it's somebody else. Here's the world in which it becomes somebody else eventually. Jaquan Jackson becomes your full-time punt returner, and he goes down to injury. I still then think it's Mason Kinsey because he's listed right now on their unofficial depth chart, which don't read into it, but he has this whole time been listed as the number 1 punt returner. I think he's their favorite option besides Jaquan. And then, depending on bigger body guys, like in a world in which you're missing DeAndre Hopkins and Traylon Burks to injury, which now that I said that out loud is disconcertingly possible, knowing both of their track records, maybe then you see somebody like
Kearis Jackson.
I was going to say Kearis Jackson
Oliver?
or Bryce Oliver. Yeah, I was like, should I say this?
If Colton Dowell comes back,
you may Colton Dowell. If he comes back, it might be Colton Dowell. That also might be a situation where they're looking to pick somebody off the waiver wire. Yeah, I don't know. I say all that to say, what is the track for Kyle Phillips to jump up onto the roster during the year? It's going to take like Tyler Boyd and Jaquan Jackson getting hurt, I think, for him to see the roster. That's how I currently feel.
I think so, considering that Kyle Phillips is already dealing with that nagging hamstring injury that he continues to have almost every single year, right? He's already starting off, even before the season, having an uphill battle, having to come back from that injury. And then, we've seen this time and time again. Once Kyle Phillips kind of has that hamstring injury, it tends to sometimes linger. And so, first of all, he would have to come back healthy and be available for him to even consider a spot on the roster, I think, at this point. And then, like you said, there are so many other moving pieces, I think, on this roster right now that would have to happen for him to bump up. Because we've talked about the different kind of roles that Brian Callahan has kind of divided this wide receiver group into. I ultimately, yes, which one do you think Kyle Phillips most definitely fits into? Like, which one does he thrive in out of the X, Z, Y, any of these kind of positions? Like, Kyle Phillips just doesn't feel like he truly fits any of those. And that's why it's hard for me to even find him a spot on the roster.
I think I'm more confident than you that he could be a functional direct backup to Tyler Boyd and be deployed in the same way offensively. I just don't think he can do anything else. And like with Tyler Boyd, you're not going to really move him outside, although in the past he's done it. So like he at least has some experience there. With Phillips, you're not ever moving him out of that slot role. So yeah, again, that's been the problem this whole time, right? He's so singular a player. He is so inflexible. It becomes really hard to find the right spot for him. And I like the guy a lot. And I wish, I've spent the last 2 years wishing nothing more than to watch Kyle Phillips tearing it up on a Sunday, Hunter Renfrow style. But much like Hunter Renfrow, that light burned bright in the right moment, a very brief moment in time. And then I don't know if this is the case with Renfrow, but then it becomes difficult for that to continue. So that might be a very flawed metaphor, but I think that's the case. And I think we can move on here to the tight ends. The first off the board move I've made really so far, I think in terms of Nashville consensus, is keeping 4 tight ends. Maybe even this is something people are starting to come around to. I've beaten this one like a drum. I think David Martin Robinson has acquitted himself well enough in the preseason, first of all, to be worthy of a spot. UDFA rookie who has been really impressive in camp, has come along very quickly, and maybe most importantly, in the actual games, both of their preseason games, he leads all Titans pass catchers, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. He leads them all with 5 catches and I think 68, 70 something yards. It's been really good. And even more impressive than his receiving prowess so far has been his ability to be that F move tight end, line up as the fullback, and be a key blocker, not just key blocker, but key and extremely effective blocker in the run game. He fits this run scheme really well. The second point, which I've said before, but I'll quickly reiterate, the Titans tight end room is bifurcated into Ys and Fs. The F is that fullback move tight end. The Y is that traditional inline tight end. And we know that Vanette and Wiley are going to be those Ys. We know that Chigakonkwo is the current F that's definitely on the roster. And if they only keep 3, they will only be 1 deep with F. They'll need Wiley or Vanette to be able to play. They need to be able to switch hit a little bit. And to look at the rest of the roster for what it's worth, are there other guys competing for F? A fair question. Well, Thomas Odukoya so far has been lined up primarily in the preseason games, at least, as the Nick Vanette Y replacement. He's been filling in for Vanette essentially in the depth chart. So he's been playing Y. And then Stylianos, I'm not going to sit and lie to the folks. I don't know what he's been playing. I don't think it's been F, but maybe it has been. So either his competition, DMR's competition at F, is either Chig and then nobody, or Chig and then Steven Stylianos, who, spoiler, Stylianos is not making the roster. Is this what you had, JT? And if so, was this one of the tougher decisions for you?
Yeah, so once again, I'm pretty chalk with you. I have DMR making the roster, mostly because, I mean, we heard from his offensive coordinator today, Nick Holtz, kind of talking to the point of DMR looked like a totally different player when the pads came on. And he showed us something that we really didn't see in OTAs. And I think that's something that all of us can agree with. DMR has looked the role. And I think when all things are considered, having that 2-2 of both positions instead of just having Chig as one and then having to maybe have him kind of be able to be a little bit more versatile, that's something that I think, is worth having DMR on the roster. Being able to let both Josh Wiley and Chigakonkwo, for the most part, those 2 guys as the starters, do what they're doing best right now and play inside this role in Brian Callahan's offense that they've been really trying to perfect and create with this offense. And so having less on Chig or Josh Wiley's plate by keeping DMR, I think, is the right move.
Yep. I will say, of the 4 positions we've gone through, DMR being the 4th tight end is the first one we've come to. I mean, it's the first green thing I have on here. It's the first guy that if you told me he didn't make 53-man roster, I wouldn't actually be super shocked. I'd be surprised and disappointed, but not super shocked. I'm kind of glossing over the practice squad guys because we'll come back to that here at the end, who I think does and doesn't belong on the practice squad. But if you're curious, as you're watching along with us here on Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page, you can see them in yellow below. Okay. Let's just knock the O-line is such a big task, but let's just go ahead and knock it out. I have them keeping 10 offensive linemen. I think they're keeping either 9 or 10. I told JT earlier today, maybe because we keep talking about these charity guys, right? Like we get to the end and there needs to be 7 guys that fill some spots just based on talent alone. Maybe my hot take will be that by decree of Bill Callahan, they're just keeping all 17 offensive linemen. That's every charity guy is a lineman, and then the first team in NFL history to roster 15 linemen on day 1. I don't think that's actually happening, but I wish it would, because like we said on Tuesday, I'm confident I'll get 3 or 4 of these wrong when we find out the real list on Tuesday. And I'm confident at least 2 or 3 of them will be linemen. Beyond the starting 5, which we know for sure, they're locked in: Latham, Skoronski, Cushenberry, Petit-Frere, Radens. In that order, almost in that order, left to right. Flip Radens and Petit-Frere. Obviously, Radens your left guard, or right guard. Petit-Frere your right tackle. Beyond them, it's 5 guys that are all really similar. I think Daniel Brunskill is clearly the next one in terms of talent. Now, we heard Jim Wyatt earlier on 104.5 today, I think 3HL, talking about how he's heard around the building, this is the perks working for the team, of some potential surprise cut candidates. And I think the financials are the biggest thing we don't pay attention to when it comes to cut candidates, how much money the Titans stand to gain back if they don't keep a guy on the roster. A guy like Daniel Brunskill is one of those bigger-ish money, big is relative in this sense, but bigger-ish money guys and he's older. Wouldn't shock me if he's a surprise cut candidate for that reason. But if it's based on talent alone, I don't see how Daniel Brunskill is not on this roster. I think Andrew Rupchich, similar situation. They've continued to have him be in a direct battle with Dylan Radins at that right guard spot. Now, we've heard in really just the past couple of days that Radins has separated himself and is in position to be the starter. They've kind of gone ahead and winked and nodded and said, yes, this is the case. I don't think they're getting rid of the direct backup to him or maybe their first swing guard in that sense. And then it gets hard. The next three guys, a real crapshoot for me. I'll briefly explain why I included the three I did, and then JT. Surely these aren't the same lists, right? You have different guys.
No, I do. This is where we probably deviate.
This is going to be so boring if we were just the exact same roster.
Yeah.
Okay. I have Latavius Simmons, Jalen Duncan, and Cole Spencer for different reasons. With Simmons, I think just based on watching practice and watching the game so far, I think that he has been the next best lineman. I think that he has looked overall pretty good in both of the preseason games. I think he may have been the best lineman out there, frankly, just top to bottom performance in the second preseason game against the Seahawks. So I'm including him. I think they like him. Jalen Duncan, to be honest with you, I'm including him simply because I think it comes down to you either keep Duncan or Ojukwu. I don't think they keep both tackles. And every time we've talked to Bill Callahan, he has made a point to bring up, that Duncan kid. I like that kid. I don't know. I'm not sure I necessarily agree personally, but I think Bill Callahan really likes him. I think between Ojukwu and Duncan, the reason Duncan got drafted and Ojukwu didn't is Duncan's the better on paper profile, has probably a higher potential ceiling. So I think they keep Duncan because Callahan likes him. And then Cole Spencer, another guy that I just think Bill Callahan likes, young upside, really the only young upside guy amongst these backups on the offensive line, who we know that Bill Callahan spent a lot of time pre-draft scouting, doing a lot of boots on the ground work on him. And he's looked pretty good in 2 preseason games as well. So the controversial guys I'm cutting, I guess, are Leroy Watson, who was brought in by Callahan, and Ojukwu, who started strong in camp, and then his stock has faded. And then I don't think anybody's surprised that Brian Dooley and Jerron Christian aren't making the roster. But can I guess who you had in and out, JT?
Sure, yeah.
Surely they're very close. I'd imagine. I don't know. Do you have Ojukwu in and Spencer out?
I do not. So here's my list. So like you said, I have the same top 5 as it is. I have them keeping Daniel Brunskill once again, because even though according to Spotrac here, like you said, cap, is something that we haven't really considered. And if you're going by cap hit, Daniel Brunskill is the 17th cap hit on this roster. Okay. So, I mean, having him as a backup is not nothing for $3.something million.
Making this team now that we're considering this line of reasoning. Yeah,
I still think for what it's worth, though, he is a better option to be the backup center than a Corey Levin, or anybody
this is so
else.
Bad. I didn't even have Levin written on here. Sorry, Corey.
Well, Corey's going on the not making the team, I guess.
Yeah, but he deserves to be on here in red at the very. Show some respect.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, show Corey Levin some respect, even though they did re-sign him. This is why it's such a hard dart throw, right? Because. Right. Do you take into account that they re-signed Corey Levin in the at the beginning of camp? Do you take? But
Corey Levin, we know this about Corey Levin. They always go to. He can't die. They just always go to him when they need a body. And this is how it goes everywhere with Corey Levin. He gets cut, then he joins back, and he gets cut, and he joins back. He'll be back eventually.
I still think that they think Daniel Brunskill is the next best guy up to be that backup center behind Lloyd Cushenberry. So that's why I think they're keeping him.
So Andrew top 6 were the same.
Yes, Andrew Rupchich, I have him on there as well.
The top 7 were the same.
He is probably their backup right guard behind Dylan Radins right now.
I think he's their number 1 swing guard. In general, not to cut you off, I'm sorry, but I think in terms of swing guys, I think number 1 backup at center is Brunskill. Number 1 backup at guard is Rupchich. So I guess then it becomes, who do you think is their number 1 backup at tackle?
Here's where we get into an interesting discussion, because I'm keeping Leroy Watson.
Okay.
I'm keeping Leroy Watson and Jalen Duncan as my next 2. I have 10 as well. So I have Jalen Duncan and Leroy Watson. And then as my last one, you kind of separated him off, but I am keeping Jerron Christian for a different reason. One is that because I think that when you get down to it, and if they have a very hard pressed, decision to make, Bill Callahan might go back on the historical
His
note
guys.
that these are the guys he brought in. These are the guys that he knows has worked in the past and in a pinch has helped Cleveland kind of stabilize that line. And so I know a Cole Spencer is a very interesting guy who has a lot of upside. I know Latavius Simmons has looked pretty good, but I'm taking a little bit of a different route when I was thinking about this, as in Bill Callahan looking at this. Okay, if we need a guy to go in, who is a guy that I've had in the past that has worked when I've had to call upon him in a pinch and be that guy to step up? Much Bill Callahan might like having a Cole Spencer come into the team here. Okay, well,
our buddy Stoney in the comments does not at all agree with you on the Leroy Watson.
And that's fair. Like I said, this is just my kind of my way of thinking. This is how I've really thought about this. Like you said, there are a million different ways. They could keep Brian Dooley for all we know. They could keep John Ojukwu for all we know. Like that's just where my mind went to, that if Bill Callahan needed a guy in the pinch, I feel like he might go with the historical success that he's had with other teams in the past.
Fair enough. And I don't begrudge you that at all. And that's why I'm not confident in removing anybody besides Levin and Dooley, just because I know that they're not Bill guys. So I get that.
So if I go to my practice squad,
so you got no Latavius Simmons, no Cole Spencer on your roster. Those are the differences, right?
Yes, I have Cole Spencer and Latavius Simmons, I believe, as my backup guys as on the practice squad.
Practice squad guys. Okay.
Yes.
Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Thanks for that.
Want more of the latest from the Hot Read podcast? Subscribe to the channel right below.
And follow us on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram @HotReadPod for even more segments, clips, and announcements.